Welcome to the CTOX podcast. This is the place to be if you're a technology leader navigating the fractional CTO landscape. I'm Marissa Brassfield, joined by Lior Weinstein, the visionary behind CTOX.
Here, we cut through the noise to deliver actionable insights for CTOs at every stage, whether you're looking at your first five-figure client or actively building systems to scale.
That's right. You'll learn principles, not just tactics, to transform your technical expertise into a thriving fractional practice. Let's dig in. Welcome back to the CTOX podcast. Today, we're talking about a subject that comes up almost daily inside the CTOX accelerator: imposter syndrome. The fact is, as far as CTOX goes, our fractional CTOs aren't aspiring leaders. They're already making high-stakes decisions. So why does imposter syndrome still creep in? In this episode, we'll unpack how to shift your mindset, own your role, and lead with conviction without waiting to feel ready. Welcome, Lior. So excited for today's subject.
This is probably one of the common things we talk about in the program. And it's not one of those things I think that, we can really use for marketing, right? It's not a front stage problem. It's a backstage issue, but it shows up front stage. So it's a very important discussion.
Yeah. Perhaps it's easier to kick off with this. When does imposter syndrome not creep in?
Yeah, I was trying to think earlier, like how often it comes. And then intuitively, what came up to me is like rates, like how often per day, per week? Meaning, like it's that kind of a constant thing that comes up. And for me, at least, as I was reflecting on it, I noticed that it doesn't come up to me when it matters. Meaning when I actually perform. So if I'm in a conversation with a prospect or with a client, I don't feel an imposter at all. I actually feel like a master. I feel super authentic, super genuine, and I do a good job. Meaning I have hard evidence that I do a good job. So the only times where it comes up, even if it's for a moment, right? I don't like wallow in imposter syndrome. Even if it's for a moment, it's some form of an anxiety, right? It's some form of like I'm imagining a future that's not real. It's not in front of me, and that future is negative. And I contrast that against, let's say, hope, which is same thing. Like it's not real, it's in the future, but it's positive. It's something you look forward to, you anticipate, you have anticipation for. And in the program, it comes up in different flavors. Like early on, when people talk to us, let's say they're just starting conversations with us, right? They got on the phone to learn about the program or something like that. And the original kind of little tidbits that we hear is, am I ready to be a CTO? I've never been a titled CTO, right? But then, we talk to them and they're like, well, they've been a director of engineering at Amazon and they've led 100 people, right? Where some of our CTOs in the program never led more than 10, right? Or 5 for that matter. And the context is the CTO is the chief technology officer, and replace T with I or security, whatever it is, of the business. So and now to be the CTO of a 20 location chiropractor group, right, is a very different technical requirements and challenges than to be the CTO of Amazon, right, of Microsoft, of HubSpot, of these kind of big technology giants. And by and large, for all of the CTOs in the program, they feel super confident to be the CTO for their niche. That's why it's their niche, because they know that for that kind of an audience, that kind of technical challenges, they feel very confident in sherping them through the problems, through the solutions. And yet it still comes up quite often. So like anybody that's listening to this, we'll dissect it and analyze it in this podcast. And you should know it's very common, even for the most experienced CTOs that have a lot of a lot of history, both from a technical proficiency perspective and from just pure leadership, been there, done that, have multiple clients and so on. It's still a common, bug that comes up for all of us.
Yeah. And when I think about it, it's when I'm in a place of comparison and I'm looking at somebody else who has something that I don't yet have, whether it's followers, engagement, there's some financial metrics perhaps. And I'm going, oh man, like that person isn't even real, like they are the imposter and they have the thing. But in both cases, it's that feeling that I do not have momentum. And it is a fear thing, it is an inner game moment. And another place it comes in for our CTOXs is they'll have years of leadership experience, but from a resume standpoint, they have not had years as a fractional CTO with that title, and that's an important reframe. How do you differentiate, and how do we work with coaches or with CTOXs as a coach to help them decouple their expertise with what it says on their resume?
Yeah, in the program, we tell them to focus on the activities, on the challenges, right? So when we actually ask them, have you led people? Yes, well, that's a requirement for the program. So obviously, if they're in the program, they've done it. Have you led people? Do you know how to figure out, problems? Have you worked with high-level executives, right? If the chiefs, VPs, whatever, depending on the size of organization you come from, right? A VP in Fortune 500 organization is well akin in terms of responsibility to a CEO of a $20 million, revenue business. So do you have experience interacting with those? Do you have an experience interacting with those high-level business decisions? Leading people, leading through technologies, leading through the creation, leading through integration. So we help them understand that the actual behaviors and activities that they've done are of that magnitude and that importance. So they had led technology initiatives, they had led people, they had led technology initiatives, and from there, the context of the CTO is again within the context of their specific niche, right? Specific challenges. And as long as they've done that, we tell them you can and you should serve as that technology leader for the CEOs and organizations that are looking for your experience of leadership.
Yeah. And it's one thing, I'll often share in our one-on-ones with CTOXs, I'll be like, you may be new at this, but you're not brand new. You're not brand new to technology or leadership or even leadership in this sector. Why do you think so many fractional CTOs who do have that depth of experience and expertise, why do you think that they still feel that level of imposter syndrome? Why does it keep creeping in at different parts of this journey?
There are a few reasons I see when it comes up. First of all, if they mostly come from a career standpoint from corporate, then and maybe academia and both, meaning they went through technical degrees and then they went into the corporate world as juniors, seniors, leaders, and so on, from individual contributors to managers and executives. Then professionally, the environment is the one that quote unquote certified them, right? Told them that you are now good enough to be a director, a manager, a leader, an executive, a VP, and so on. So their sense of identity comes from other people telling them that they're worthy and now they can be at a certain level, right? Which is this is private industry, right? So meaning it's Google certified you to be at a certain level. That company has certified you to be at a certain level. When I was a young entrepreneur, I remember this. One of the first startups that I led, or rather created. So we had two other co-founders, and all three of us. Like I was probably the only quote unquote marketing kind of growth guy on team, but all three of us were technical, right? And I remember this pitching into VCs, and before the meeting is okay, you be the CEO this time, you be the CTO this time. We were just switching hats, right? Because it didn't matter. We called ourselves whatever we called ourselves. And at that point in time, that was that obviously in retrospect, pretty different. But in principle, it's understanding that it's a self-identity issue more than anything. And if you come up from the corporate world, then you're used to other people giving you the certificate, giving you the degree, giving you the title, giving you the corner office, and then you feel quote unquote worthy. Even then, imposter syndrome still, well lives and prevalent in day-to-day lives. The other side, people come into the program, we tell them you're entrepreneurs that happen to be CTOs. And some of them are experienced entrepreneurs. I mean, they're experienced being by themselves, hunting, getting clients, serving clients, and building. And some of them don't, but all of them have that entrepreneurial bug in the sense that they see a future that they want to create and they're taking it in their own hands and making it happen. Professionally, they might have been entrepreneurs, right? And when they go external now, they become entrepreneurs. And in that world, you need different forms of validation. So your sense of self-efficacy, the ability and the confidence you have to make things happen. So when you want to make anything happen, you have a high degree of confidence that it will happen, that it will be efficacious, is tied into your self-esteem. So high self-efficacy is tied into high self-esteem, and vice versa. If you don't have a good degree of self-efficacy, you're probably going to have a low degree of self-esteem. Now, what's interesting is professionally, from a proficiency standpoint, our CTOs don't have a problem, right? They don't feel that. Some of them might feel quote unquote weaker in some areas other than others. Like if you're not, you haven't done a lot of AI stuff, and now we're in the AI era, haven't done a lot of crypto stuff, when blockchain was a thing and so on. But all of them have a high degree of self-efficacy with the things they have experience with, and all of them feel very confident that they can figure it out. They have high degree of figure out ability. Because historically, the title, right, and the title of a CTO or title of fractional CTO for that matter, like being able to do that for multiple clients, wasn't there. They don't have the evidence, that they're not pairing the actual evidence they have, which is the ability to make things happen and lead people, with the title. So the imposter syndrome comes with the title issue. It does not come with the activity. So in the program, we try to work with them and tell them, well, the activity is what matters. Title is just lipstick. And title is the frame. That's just like what some industries, the fractional CTOs go to, they don't know what a CTO is, let alone what a fractional CTO is. The reason they don't know what a CTO is because the industry could never afford one for those small to mid-sized businesses. So part of the challenge is even like explaining what a CTO is. So instead of explaining what a CTO is, don't work on that. Work on the vision. Everybody understands technology, and everybody understands leveraging technology for revenue, leveraging technology for cost and optimization and those kind of things. So the core principle is actually having conversation with prospects on where do they want to go? How do they want to accomplish it? How does technology play? And you are the leader for that. You can turn all those black boxes in technology to glass boxes in technology. So it's transparent, it makes sense, nobody's afraid of it, and then their vision and mission can expand.
I love it. So our coach, Dan Sullivan, often talks about, who coaches entrepreneurs all over the world, about how the number one job for an entrepreneur is protecting your confidence. And a big part of that, not everybody has the self-efficacy, self-trust baked in from jump, and you need to cultivate it, almost like building a muscle. And some of the things that we talk about inside coaching calls are building an evidence folder. This could be stories, photos, screenshots of your wins. We also, on a more tactical basis, we've got a tool called the Experience and Impact Inventory. Go through your resume, your career history, and list the most noteworthy results. And then in our live prompting workshops, we take that and wrap stories around it. What was the world like before? Yeah. What was the world like before you started working with that business, with that client on that project? What did you do? And then what was the happy ending afterwards? And it's so amazing how easy it is to tease these amazing stories out of people who would, at the start of the call, they're in the gap. We talk about the gap and the gain a lot, and they're feeling the imposter syndrome. They're feeling that like they are not enough in some way. And then by the end of the call, just by documenting the activities, the results, the outcomes that have already happened, wrapping a little bit of story around it, now they've got some evidence that they can build on. And, the longer you've been in business, the more evidence you have amassed, including from the lessons, hard fought failures, like all those insights can be really valuable sources of evidence as well. It's so interesting, confidence. And another related subject you mentioned a few minutes ago, like the idea that they don't know everything about a specific subject. So why is not knowing everything actually a leadership strength, especially when it comes to being a fractional CTO?
There's a few angles. First of all, you're there to create. And almost by definition, the business hadn't done what they need you to do. So they don't know. So the skill is mapping, ideating, make it up, make it real, make it scale. If they already knew how to do it, they probably would have done it. So the core skill, first of all, for the leader. So if you think about the difference between managers and leaders, managers are there to manage a capability that somebody defined, like keep the box running, right? Whatever it is, keep the engine running and make it efficient. So keep it at a certain speed, keep it on and keep it at a certain speed, certain pace. Leaders are there to create new capabilities. So they're there to create the new capabilities. Managers are there to manage those capabilities. So the core skill is living in the unknown for the C-suite. It's not living in the known, and it's not managing the known. From a fractional perspective, even more important, because we're big advocates of Dan Sullivan's Who Not How, you want people to pay you for your leadership and your insight, not for your management and your hands on the keyboard or the mouse. So the core skill is not just make things up, but also I'll allocate and assign the human capital on those projects. So you are not the one that's creating them for two reasons. One, so you get the best person. You might understand, oh, we need a cybersecurity initiative, but you're probably not the best cyber guy. You just know how to evaluate who is the best cyber guy for this particular project or initiative. Same thing with AI, same thing with engineering, same thing with IT, whatever that is. So you want, from a scale perspective, you want the best person on the job, and it's very unlikely you are the best person for the job, because your best job is integrating all these things. It's coming up with the strategy and integrating how all these things orchestrate together. So you want the best person on the job, and you don't want you on the job so you can do it with 5 other clients, 10 other clients, and so on. So the core skill is really thinking about the most relevant initiative and a list of initiatives for the organization, and allocating the best resources that are not you. If it's individuals, if it's contractors, platforms, companies, whatever that is.
How would you challenge the assumption that many of our fractional CTOs have, which is clients are going to expect me to have encyclopedic technical knowledge on every aspect of technology?
A few things. One, we haven't seen it. At this point in the accelerator, we have, trained with and on like over 200 people, right? We haven't seen it. We haven't seen. So that's a good example of it, like an anxiety related, rejection. We haven't seen that. We have literally, like, I've never seen it in my professional career. And now that we've seen many, many, many hundreds of proposals and pitched, we haven't seen that reason, right? That somebody's expecting. So I think that's a good example of like anxiety that's not real. Like classic anxiety, meaning it's a future that's unreal, that's negative, and it's not supporting you, serving you. So we can tell you, if you're listening to this, that particular one is a common one, and we've never seen it in the wild. Now, if you do see it in the wild, I would say two things. One, it's the wrong CEO, the wrong client. Because who cares? Who cares about the how? Who cares about the how? You want the outcome. In this economy, we have Google, we have ChatGPT, like all these things, like access to knowledge is so like instant and in context and immediate and cheap. Like who cares? Who cares that you don't know? But you should care about, does he know how to ask the right question to solve whatever you need to solve? And does he have, do they have good discernment? So when the options are in front of them, do they know how to choose? Which is really the core skills. Part of the reason why the people that come to the accelerator, we expect them to have 15 years of professional experience, not as CTOs, but like as being in business and in corporate life, is because most of your work is to be a co-pilot for the CEO. And the reason we talk about 15 years plus is because you need to have seen life. You need to have seen companies go up and go down, and budgets disappear, and people quit, and people die, and people get divorced, and people complain. Like, just see life. because most of the challenges that you're gonna cope out with the CEO are just life or just human things, and the technical things are actually not that difficult for you. That's why you're hired, because you can handle the technical things. And that's why when people come in the program and they're like, 25-year-old whiz kids, which I used to be. I used to be like very good. I was excellent at what I did. As a young guy, I was excellent at what I did. But I didn't see life, not enough yet. So for me to be a confidant to the CEO and be able to run through complex board interactions and complex personnel issues while delivering on technology roadmap and leadership would have been very, very limited. Not impossible, but certainly not as good as me 15 years later, because I have seen the things. So I think people going at this from a career perspective, they'll notice that the technical part of the work is fairly simple. The real constraint is resources, is people to do the work. It's engineers, contractors, IT vendors, whatever that is. That's the real constraint, because you wanna create something, you outline the projects, the timeline, the tasks, and then people need to metabolize those tasks into reality, right? Into code, configurations, hardware, whatever that is. And that part usually, like, we don't train on, because pretty much anybody in the program knows how to do it or knows how to figure it out. They have access to us, so if they have a question. But if I'm looking at all the questions that come up in the program, I don't think, Marissa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I rarely see those questions. Like, I'm not sure how to execute on this plan, or I'm not sure how to create this plan. It would be, out of the thousands of questions we deal with, we can probably count on one hand the things that are related to figuring out how to do something, technically how to execute a project. But we do see all the time, how do I talk? How do I have this kind of conversation? How do I position something? How do I frame something? How do I have a hard conversation, a difficult conversation? How do I move a project forward? How do I manage the human relationships? By far, way more than anything technical.
And it's so true. That is where we see imposter syndrome come in another way, which is the hands-on keyboard, proven, skilled firefighters who have been in it. They've been in the weeds. They live there. Now we're asking them to level up their leadership. Now we're asking them to think and communicate cross-functionally and engage non-technical stakeholders, all those things you just mentioned. And what are some of the shifts and reframes that have been most effective in helping these firefighters shift to their new role?
One way I think about it is you have your hands on the keyboard, which is the comfortable place for practitioners to be in, right? But really the shift is you need hands on people's hearts. It's very different, right? When you're leading people. You're not moving bits and bytes around. And you're no longer a piano player, that you're a conductor. So your hands don't get to be on the keys. You need the wand, you need to be in front of the orchestra, and you need to make all these things work. You need to make all the emotions work together and all of the resources work together. And that's a big shift, huge shift. Because if you're a good technical person, the technical things are easy. But extra easy now, by the way. Even things that I don't know, I can catch up, with AI in a few minutes and go back to my comfort place. I'm there. I'm not on Zoom with anyone. I just move things around, push some code or not, or just click buttons. So moving from, your hands on the keys to your hands on people's hearts is a big change. Moving from that player to the coach to the conductor, big change. Aspirationally, we focus on the freedoms that they want to create in their career as a fractional CTO, right? We talk about these 4 freedoms in the program by Dan Sullivan, with the freedom of time, freedom of money, freedom of purpose, and freedom of relationship. As people come in, they have different focus. Most people start with freedom of money, or they want to earn a certain way, but then most of them pivot to freedom of time or freedom of relationship, because they want to spend more time traveling or being with their kids or entertainment, whatever it is. And they really want to not have bad relationships in their lives. They don't want to have a meeting or be in a room with people that drain their energy. So as they come in the program, we help them develop their vision. What success looks like? What of these freedoms exist, and to what extent and when? Based on that, we help them realize, well, to be a fractional CTO, you can't do the work. And in fact, if you want to gain the freedom of time, you can't waste your time and spend your time being on the keyboard. That's not the highest value to the business. The highest value to the business is making the business outcomes real. And if you want, and not just making the business outcomes real, you want to make it real for multiple businesses so you get the income that you want to create for the other freedoms. And to make those things real, assuming you're not the hands of the keyboard, it has to be other people on the keyboard, and those other people have to want to do it. And for them to want to do it, you need to lead them to do it. You need to find the best people to be in those seats. They need to buy into your vision. They need to buy into your leadership. So when you ask them, hey, these are 30 projects we need to execute in the next 12 weeks, they need to be with you, not against you. They need to feel supported. And all of these are leadership skills and leadership qualities, and they're not practitioner skills. They're not management skills.
This is so related to in charge versus in control. I'd love for you to break this concept down in relation to everything we've been discussing about leadership and imposter syndrome.
When people start with the program, we talk about this issue of, if you want to be successful as a fractional CTO, being an entrepreneur, you want to be in charge and not in control. And the way we explain in the program, we say you want to be in the back of the Uber, not the front of the Uber. So you order the Uber through the app. You ask the driver, go left, go right, change the AC, turn up the music. But somebody else has their hands on the steering wheel, using the turn signals. And you know what? You have a driver's license. If something happens, you can take the driver's seat, but you really don't want to. Ideally, you're not even in the Uber. You're ordering the Uber for someone else from your app, and somebody else is going, like the highest leverage. The thing is happening. People are arriving to the destination by you, because of you. You set the destination, you made the engagement happen, but you're not even in the car. But if you're in the car, you need to be in the back seat. And worst case, you're in the front seat. It's a big mindset shift because control is easy, control is familiar. And being in charge, though, is where you get the fun, where you get to rest while the car is driving. You get to look at the view. You get to opine and say, you know what, take the L. It's going to get us there faster. And they can tell you, no, I know the road better. I'm like, okay, that's fine. And you move on and you shut up again and you go back to your YouTubes, TikToks, however you spend the time. And your key input was at the beginning of the ride. Hey, this is where we're going. We're going to the airport. And we're going to the airport in 15 minutes. And this is the car. It's going to be an Uber Black. Or it's going to be a van because we're picking a few people up. That's a key decision point. You need to define it. And then you're in, and then you're confirming, yep, I'm it. This is where we're going. Everything is good. Yep, take us 35 minutes. Great. If anything happens, I'm in the back. And then while you're driving, once in a while, you look up like, yep, seems like we're heading in the right path. Safe driver. Loud music, let's turn it down. And so you're making key decision points as you observe the activity. And both of you know who's in charge. And you understand you're not in control. As soon as you can adopt that mindset, the sooner you can get clients, have scale, get more clients, and enjoy the work. And really focus on the impact, on the fact that this car is getting to the airport. It's going to be there by 2:30 with the right equipment.
So good. Oh, man. So another subject related to this whole imposter syndrome riff is we see fractional CTOs wait. They want to wait till they're ready, till they feel ready to start the prospecting activities. And as we talked about at the top of the call, it is those activities that get you out of the imposter syndrome mindset. So it's this sort of chicken and egg moment. What advice would you give fractional CTOs who are waiting and finding themselves either in analysis paralysis or procrastination, fear, a variety of fears, but the net result is they're not getting started? What would you say to them?
Bias to action is so important. Like when I think about the most successful entrepreneurs I know, the most successful people I know, to be honest, doesn't even matter if they're entrepreneurs or not. It's people that take action. There's very little progress that can happen when you're spinning in your own mind. Information rarely leads to results. Action nearly always leads to a result. Now, it might not be the result you want, but it's a result you can improve from. So it's either an action that leads to a result you wanted, or it's an action that leads to a result you didn't want, and now you have feedback, and then you can change your action. But there's nothing that's going to get you a result without action. So the soonest you can get the action, the better. The work needs to be done whether you like it or not. You are not going to get contracts without conversations. And you're not going to get conversations without reaching out to people. Now, are there people on your phone? Are there people in your family? Are there people on LinkedIn? Are there people at a conference? That's an engineering problem. This is a specific issue. And that's specifically to your style, to your market, to your whatever channels are available to you, and so on and so forth. But the key principle is you're not going to get contracts until you talk to people, and you're not going to talk to people until you contact them. Simple. I agree with you. The best people in the program, the most successful in the program, people that take action. That's why the fastest person we had in the program that got a contract was like 48 hours. Incredible. Cold client on LinkedIn. Cold. Knew nothing about them. Why? Because he just said, F it. I'm just going to contact these, send 40 messages, got on a meeting, the guy had a pain, close a contract. Obviously an outlier. But in the program, when we look at people that like make it fast, we see 3, 4, 6 weeks. That's fast. And that's fast, and we see it like it's a thing. Certainly from a bell curve perspective, that's the fast. And then most people are somewhere in that 3 month, 4 month, 5 month mark. First client is always slowest because you have nothing to use. You can't say I'm working with 4 other people. You don't understand. Most people don't. This marketing is new to them. Sales is new to them. So it's kind of like training wheels. Second client way faster. 5 client is just fast, like it just comes for most people. But yeah, bias to action by far. Just the realization that the contracts are not going to come without conversations. Conversations are not going to come unless you reach out. And the work has to be done whether you're in the mood for it or not. And the challenge of you knowing what to say is it should be something you iterate on. So unlike a job, some stuff are like a job. Unlike a job where you lose the job, you lose your income. Right? It's 100% of your income. With client work like this, any one client is just a fraction of your income. So you should optimize more for at-bats rather than just be fully ready for every swing. Any one client you lose, any one prospect is not lose everything. It's actually just one out of probably 5 or 8 you're going to optimize for at any given point in time. So just like it's not going to be that big a deal if you lose one client, it's not a big deal if you lose the prospect. It just feels like that early on because most people come from a job. So they come from like one stream of income and then they don't get the contract and they have the same reaction as if they just lost a job interview. The other part that is similar to a job interview, if you want a job, just go to a bunch of interviews. You're not going to get a job unless you interview for the job. Period. The nice thing about client work is that even if you lose or win a job, there's more jobs and more clients, to gain. Definitely bias to action, and be okay with the fact that you're not going to win them all, and have the full realization that the work needs to be done whether you're tired and whether you know exactly what to say. You're going to get way more feedback, way more raw material to work with if you just try than if you learn and study.
Beautiful. There's a non-zero probability that someone has listened to this conversation and still has some doubts. What would you say to them to help them start showing up with conviction right now?
One is that it's normal. Doubt is normal. When I look at the most successful fractional CTOs in the program, they're not doubtless. They're not doubtless. They have courage. And, I heard this definition of like courage a few years ago, where the difference between fear and courage is fear is that you're afraid you're going to wet your pants. Courage is doing it with wet pants. So doubt is fine. It's not a counterindication that you're not ready. Okay? It's just an indication that you're excited. You want to do it. You just don't have full clarity on how it's going to roll out because you don't have the experience yet. So first of all, that it's fine. Second is try it. The way we explain things in the program is one of the first things that when people come, we try to work with them to see if they can do a network activation. So we have this exercise, it's a protocol on talking to people you know. Why do we recommend that? Because the trust factor is already there. They're going to take the call because Marissa called them and asked for a 15-minute catch-up. That's why they're going to take the call. They're not going to take the call because you're a great fractional CTO or even because they have a need. Right? They're going to take the call because they like you as a human enough to give you 15 minutes or more of your time. So I would say find the environment where even though it's awkward, even though you have doubt, you would still give it a shot. Still give it a shot. Once you start, it's way easier to continue. The friction is start friction. Right? It's fighting that inertia. Once you start, you'll see, well, that wasn't so bad. Fear is one of these things, right? A mile wide and an inch deep. So confronting it, just trying, just even saying, I'm a fractional CTO, and go to a business. I guess that's probably the best final advice I can give. Go to a business or a business owner that you have like full confidence you can take care of the technology. And maybe that's a local coffee shop in your neighborhood. And they probably don't need a CTO, but maybe it's that. And then talk to the owner. Say, I'm a fractional CTO for coffee shops. I'm thinking about being a fractional CTO for coffee shops. What do you think? Do you guys have any technology issues? Just because you're going to have the confidence, like there's no way if you're listening to this that you don't have the confidence to handle technology for a coffee shop. Instead of thinking, wow, I can't beat the CTO for HubSpot or Microsoft. Like, okay, put that aside. Few people can. Find a business or find the kind of conversation that you're like, you're going to master. You're it. Like, way more than the other person in the conversation, and just give it a shot and see where it goes.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. Set aside 30 minutes after you listen and think of a list, 10, 15 names, locations, businesses where you can go and have those conversations, set up a conversation. It doesn't have to be big. It can start small.
Start small.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Lior. I always love your mindset reframes. I'm looking forward to our next episode.
Me too, and good luck.
That wraps up another episode of the CTOX podcast. We hope today's conversation gave you the tools and inspiration to advance your journey as a fractional CTO.
And don't forget, if you want more in-depth support or to connect with our community of fellow fractional CTOs, visit us at ctox.com.
Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you next time on the CTOX podcast.